Welcome to Astro Chat with Anne Sundell, Kimberly Williams, and Monica Anna. We are three professional astrologers living in three separate countries, coming together every new and full moon to share our 3 points of view on astrology. Whether you enjoy deep dives into the current transits or you are just beginning to learn about astrology for the first time, there is a place for you here. All that is required is an appreciation for astrology, along with a respect for the various traditions within it. So grab a mug of coffee, your favorite cup of tea, or any other beverage of your choice, and join us for a chat on the astrology of the next 2 weeks. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another week of Astro Chat with myself, Kimberly Williams, Monica Anna from Modern Yoga, and Anne Sundell. And, well, I'm just going to put it out there that I have a feeling today's episode is going to be a little raw and rough and very authentic. I say that because as we are recording, I am not at my home office. I am at Perfect Love, Perfect Trust, a great store for those who live here in San Antonio, Texas. And hopefully the internet will be our friend and we'll get all of this through. I will mute myself because I know there's some background noise. But before we do that, how about we take a peek at this beautiful, glorious new moon chart? The new moon is going to happen for those of us here in San Antonio or Central Time Zone, United States, at 1:25 a.m. on April 1st. If I did my math right, then in the UK, that's 7:25 a.m. And for those over in Finland, that's 9:25 a.m. So we all have it in the morning, April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day. Yay. What a great way to start off a lunar month with Aries energy. So if you guys don't have anything to throw in our intro, why don't we start talking about the new moon in Aries? Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect.
All right. Obviously, the new moon in Aries. Aries new moons to me are amazing. I love the fact that this is on the heels, if you will, of our spring equinox when the sun ingressed into Aries. So I have this feeling of newness, new energy, new year. I know that traditionally on our calendars, our New Year's in January, but here we are with that new year coming in with this Aries energy. It's what am I going to start? What am I going to do? We've talked a lot in prior podcasts about the new moon and how it's a time of deep seeding of what it is that we want to begin to go, of really opening up our unconscious. So for me, this is sort of like I have those seeds planted within and they're ready to just burst forward, like flowers bursting in the springtime is the way I think of it. It's this energy shooting and I can already feel that pulsating energy of there's so many things I want to do. I want to begin. I want to create. I think for me, create is the big word. It's like there are things that are within that I now want to bring forward out into the world. That's kind of my feeling about this, but I'd really like to hear how you both work with this idea of Aries energy with a new moon.
And do you want to go?
Yeah, I just thought about what Kimberly said, that it's really, this year is like we start the year several times. We're having like a new year again and a new year again. So, I mean, we have a lot of chances to do new things this year. And with the new moon in Aries after the new year, astrological year, it's like, yeah, what can I say about that? I think it's exciting. It's like you said, you feel the energy that you want to go, you want to do, but you still have to take a step back and look at your plans and not rush into it too much. I think with Aries, I have a prominent Mars in my chart, and I know myself. I mean, I want to do it. I want to do it right now. It's going to happen now, and I have to pull back a bit, maybe sleep on it a night about the decision. So a bit ambivalent about this moon. I think I can say that honestly, like Aries.
Okay, I'm not quite sure actually how I feel about this new moon. I have to say, I agree. The what I love about astrology, that it talks about cycles. So it's never a linear time. It's never like 1st of January to the 31st of December. There are constantly new cycles happening, outside in the universe and also within us. So we have our birthday, which is effectively a new year for all of us. So we can celebrate that. And Sun entering the sign of Aries, it's such a lovely beginning of spring, but also beginning of traditionally of the of astrological new year. So having a new moon in this sign so early, it's adding that extra layer of energy, of impatience, of I want to, like you say, I want to go out and I want to do it now without thinking, without considering repercussions, without considering the plan. I just want to go for it, which is brilliant energy to have it. It's good energy to have it at the time after the winter, to shake off, the winter blues, to shake off this kind of, maybe kind of slow energy of, Piscean kind of season, when we're dreaming and we're in that kind of beautiful world of dream and fantasies and envisioning the future. It's nice to kind of shake it off and say, okay, well, what am I doing now? What's my vision? What intention will I set for this new moon, for this month, to actually take action? So it's not about dreams anymore. We've done the vision board, we put down the plans, we set the New Year's resolution. Now it's the time to actually take action on them. So yeah, I've done all that. I have this vision of what's to come, but what is my first step? And I think this new moon invites that first step, and actually take that bold statement. It's interesting, as you were saying, Kimberly, earlier, that it actually falls on the Fool's Day, on April's Fool's Day, and this new moon is sandwiched between the Mercury, the planet of communication, and Chiron, the traditional, wounded healer. And I wondered about that energy of like just speak without thinking about the consequences, that Mercury in Aries, like I'll just blurt out whatever comes to mind. And I was thinking about that being paired with the April's Fool's Day, and whether or not our words of our jokes might come across as more hurtful than funny, because you have that Chiron there. So maybe being careful about how you're expressing yourself on that new moon, and whether the jokes that you're trying to make, or the comments that you're making, are they actually funny, or are they on that kind of inappropriate, not quite comfortable, awkward side of joke, where you might think you're making a joke, but actually what you're doing, you're hurting someone by making just inappropriate comment, inappropriate comparison. So that kind of Mercury Chiron speaks to me about this, about just speaking without thinking, just blurting something that some other person might take it really too hard. But also, on the other hand, there's always a flip side of that. With Chiron there is again this new energy of we can begin to heal. Maybe there's energy of like, you know what, I am ready now to take steps and talk about my trauma, and talk about my wounding, and talk about the things that make me uncomfortable, because I have that energy of Aries, and I can just go with it and start my healing journey. So this new moon can be a beautiful moment to set the intention for, I do want to heal, and there is something sitting in me, and it needs to come out like that spring flower. It needs to come out. It needs to break through that frozen, fossilized ground within me. And maybe it's a great time to find a counseling, or or therapist, or find someone who will actually help me, and I can express it. I can start talking about that and take first steps on that road to healing.
Beautiful. I love what you said about, this being action. And I do agree it so is. I think that's interesting, because for me, often a new moon is not about action. For me, it's when we get to the crescent phase that I want to kind of move into action. This is the sitting with it. But there's something about it being in Aries that I don't want to sit with it. It's Aries. I do want to take action. I do want to go. And so I think we talked the last time we recorded about difficult conversations and needing to step into them. I think we were talking about shadow work, if I remember correctly. And that sits with me here, this idea of maybe it's time to take action. Like, I think if we're unconscious, it's very easy to say the wrong thing, and it can be wounding with that Chiron Mercury. But if we are conscious, you know, the idea between the sun and the moon, the unconscious and conscious self, if we consciously use this energy to step into, to have that sense of bravery, of confidence that Aries can give us, to step into what is the hard conversation that I need to have to get to healing? Like, what is that wound that burying it under the surface or being passive aggressive or not facing it head on is just allowing that wound to fester? I'm feeling like this might be that. I've already had 3 people reach out to me, or that I have reached out to say, hey, can we sit down and talk? And I get that sense that, oh, I think there's going to be some of those, not necessarily that they're huge, but they're difficult, they're emotional, they're the conversations I'd rather avoid. And this feels like a great opportunity for healing by bringing things forward and putting it out on the, let's talk about the elephant in the room, as the saying goes, right? Let's not hide from it. Let's be brave. Let's be that warrior. Let's come forward and let's communicate. What do I need? And hear me. And okay, now what do you need? And I'll hear you. But that speaking from the self, using the I statements, I referencing of this is what I need from you, or this is what I need to change, or this is what I need to do. So those hard conversations might be with oneself, they might be with others, but I kind of feel like it's time for the thing we haven't wanted to talk about that is painful. It's time to talk about it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, and that honesty of Aries, I think that can be very helpful with this new moon, and also with the whole, when looking at the whole chart. I mean, I think we have a lot of depth and possibility to transform things here, but that new moon and that fire energy that has been lacking from this previous chart, it's very great to use.
That's true. That's true. That's the first time we actually started having more action in the fire sign that we had in the past few weeks. I mean, it's interesting as well, Kimberly, that the ruler of this lunation is Mars, is sitting in Aquarius together with Saturn and Venus. So it's very much, for me, taking, like you say, taking responsibility and accountability for your actions and for your words. So absolutely, it's the time to make those statements. I feel this way, and those are my boundaries, and I can create those boundaries now. But taking responsibility for what you're saying as well, and listening to what other people might need you to hear. That's definitely there as well.
And are you feeling like, you mentioned earlier, you were drawn to what was happening with some of the stationing nodes and Pluto? Do you think this is a good time to move into that?
Yeah, the stationing periods in general are periods that I feel can tell us something important about the energy of the place that's stationed, that we can go deeper into that we can use it in a more how can I say it in English, a more determined manner. I think with the nodes, that the stationing nodes make them more determined, make us want to go towards the upper node. So I think that maybe also it can add, and I think also it might need some help from the Aries, because the node in Scorpio is maybe not always the one that's so straightforward, but the Aries energy here can help that out a bit. That we can go from that energy towards a more clear way of expression. And also I think that with Pluto stationing at the same time, that's maybe good. It's going to be more, it's going to be better, how can I say it? It's going to be a stronger energy maybe of the station Pluto in the last half of the month. But still, it has been stationed at periods in time when there's been a big transformation in the world, be a beginning of a change that's going to be big for maybe the whole world.
Yeah. It's interesting that some of the planets, we can see their influence, if you will, quite quickly, because they are quite quick, they move very swiftly, and we can feel that energy in those shifts much more. Like you say, with planets like Pluto, it's difficult to see that change unless you zoom out and you actually see at the history, you actually see at the movement of nations, not just necessarily in our own lives. So yes, it's interesting that Pluto is kind of stopping at those last 2 degrees of the side. Like, it does not want to go into the new one yet. Like, it has still that unfinished business in the sign of Capricorn. Again, just teaching us about what it is to take responsibility, that the power means, you know, accountability for things that you do. It means responsibility for those that you look after at any level, you know, whether you are a parent, whether you are a head of corporation, you know, what it means to build a structure, to have power over that structure, and, you know, what that means to us on so many levels. Again, just bringing that back into our personal lives, that's still that kind of call out for us to see where can we transform destructions in our own lives, and where can we take power back. Where in our lives do we leave it, oh, it's the structure or the organization above me, or the boss above me, or the mother above me, or the, you know, someone else above me that makes those decisions and I just follow. And where do I say, well, okay, I don't want to follow those decisions or those actions because they don't agree with me. They take away my power. They disempower me, and they don't align with what I believe to be right and to be true. It's interesting as well that when you mentioned the nodes, and I think, Kimberly, you wanted to speak to that a bit more, is that Venus, Mars, and Saturn, those 3 planets in Aquarius, they're squaring the nodes. Venus and Mars are actually rulers. Mars is traditional ruler of that Scorpio. So it's interesting that they're squaring the nodes, and both planets that kind of trying to bring the north node and the south node together into that step that we need to learn. That it's not about the past and it's not about the future. It's about balancing stuff. So we can't move towards one direction yet unless we resolve the desire, the love that we have, the rage that we have, the actions that we take. That needs to be resolved. And Saturn in between them, I think it's again that echo of the Pluto. How do we take responsibility and accountability for our desires and for our actions, so we can move to maybe North Node, maybe more sustainable future on a private life, in our lives, with our families, with our businesses, with our work. How does that look for you? Or overall, as a society, as a culture, how do we reconcile that desire that we have, that actions that we take based on those desires, with that Saturnian, okay, this is what I need to do as an adult. I need to do some adulting now here.
We've been talking about that a lot with Saturn since it's been hanging out in Aquarius for some time, and I think we're going to continue, right? That I do feel that so much of what's happening takes us back to this: how am I taking responsibility for fill in the blank? How am I taking responsibility for fill in the blank? Like, that just seems to be a very strong repeating theme, and I love it. I love that it's there. I want to back up for a second, though, and talk a little more about, or at least add something to what Anne was mentioning about the stationing Pluto. So for me, when planets, especially the 3 outer planets that move so slowly, when planets are in those last 2 degrees, right, it's very interesting that different energy happens. From a person like myself who works with a whole sign chart, those last 2 degrees is when it's getting ready to leave a house. We know that even in other people who use other systems, it's getting ready to leave that sign. And I was recently informed from a friend who's a traditional astrologer, that 28 degrees and 29 degrees are considered to be ruled by Saturn and Mars in that system, which brings a heaviness and an energy. So it's like no matter what system you use, there's something about the 28 and the 29 degree that adds an extra layer, an extra heaviness, an extra push, and it feels like, well, it makes sense. We're bringing the transit of this planet in the sign to its conclusion. So whatever work has not been done now needs to happen right before it moves. And I feel like with Pluto, that's usually pretty deep, big work. We've talked a lot about it being the shadow base. So I'm thinking that for me, two things. One is that a lot of this is about the fears that perhaps have stopped us from creating the structure of Capricorn, of setting the boundaries of Capricorn. But something you said, Monica, made me think about also this idea that sometimes with Capricorn, it isn't about setting the boundary, it's about taking down the wall. What is it where I have over-structured and it's preventing me from, because what will come next? What's coming next is at some point Pluto will ingress into Aquarius, into the sign of freedom. So I'm thinking that as it's hanging out at these last 2 degrees, maybe the work of the past, 15 years as it's been transiting through Capricorn, maybe the work there was about setting up structures, but now during these last 2 degrees, it may be about, and what walls need to come down so that I have the ability and the freedom and the movement to do the work that will come next when it goes into that next sign. And I find myself bumping up a lot lately, the last few months, bumping up against walls of things I've created the structure. During COVID, I decided this was what I was going to do with career, and I've got structures in place, and now those structures no longer serve, or they've become something that box me in rather than giving me the freedom to flow. And I'm having to restructure, I use air quotes with that, restructure a lot of the plans and the systems and the things in place. So I was trying to figure out where that was coming from. And lately I've been sitting with this idea of, I think it's that Pluto at those last 2 degrees. And every time it stations, it feels like it just comes up even stronger.
I like the idea of the last 2 degrees of the sign. It's like prepping for an exam, because we've done the lesson, like we've done a year, or in this case, more like 15, but we've done the time in that archetype. We've learned that archetype through so many different angles. We've done, we probably learned about the good side or the light side of that archetype, about the shadow side, how it can help and support us, and how that archetype can take us down, because there's just so many expressions of any archetype. And then those last 2 degrees, it's like the planet just says, okay, have you revised what you've learned? And I'll give you a test before I move on. So it's like the last exams, before you move on to the next year, at uni or at school. And it's tough. I'm not surprised that Saturn, it's in the last degree, it's ruled by Saturn, because Saturn is that teacher. It basically says, have you done your lesson? Have you learned what that archetype is? And like you say, that archetype not necessarily is about putting the structure, but also recognizing which structures support and empower you, and which structure, you build that effectively imprison you. So it's important to know the difference. And I think, like you say, this is the moment to answer the test. Have you learned your lesson? And not sure about personal, we can all answer that question in our journals or in our, circles. On a global scale, I think you're going through a test on that as well.
Anne, could you talk a little more? I know I'm putting you right on the spot. I'm wondering if you would share just a brief thought or two about what it means when the nodes go stationary. And I say this because the nodes are retrograde most of the time, and as a result, I'm often not paying attention with the detail I'd like about that. And I'm curious from your point of view, kind of what is the significance of when they station?
Yeah, well, I think that it's a bit like when the planets retrograde. For the nodes going stationary, going towards direct is the same as for the planets going station, going retrograde. They're going to another direction than the normal direction, and that means that when they are standing still, they're leaving a deeper mark in the chart. they're highlighting everything. And I feel about the nodes like with a bit, because they are the nodes of the moon, and all the planets have nodes, but the moon is a planet that sucks in the energy of other planets. So the nodes, I also feel that they are highlighting the other planets' energy that are respecting them when they are stationary. So, and in this chart, I wanted to go back a bit to what Monika said about Saturn, Mars, and Venus, and being the rulers of the nodes. When looking at what I call special karmic aspects that ruler planets making to the nodes. It's kind of funny that a ruler of the sign of the node making an aspect, a square, is called Plutonic karmic aspect. So it means that it's highlighting the transformation, the sort of the deeper power of the node when the ruler is making a square. So that's actually the same theme as the stationary Pluto, as the Scorpio South Node. So we're going really, really Plutonic here. We're going really deep here if we're looking at the planets and the squares and so on. But this is how I view the node stationary, and somebody else might have another view. But it's how I feel about it, that it's working.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there's such this strong chord of this deep energy, right? I mean, I was aware that Pluto disposits the sun, the moon, but I wasn't thinking about, it's squaring the nodes. Mars and Venus are the ruler of the nodes. They're squaring the nodes, and they're also dispositing the new moon, sun, and moon. So like, it feels very deep energy. And I guess we should talk about that more. Monika already started us off, but let's go deeper into that. I'm feeling very much this energy, and all of this is happening just weeks before our next set of eclipses on the nodes. And so I kind of feel like this is a setup in that good way. It's building that energy that's going to be layers, and that makes sense if we're doing deep work. I don't believe we're going to rip the Band-Aid off in one fell swoop. It's like layers of healing, layers of moving. But I feel this strong urge for a lot of releasing past patterns, past behaviors. That South Node and Scorpio energy to me feels really strong in here, especially. Okay, so I have too many thoughts rambling. Let me get clearer. So when we have the squares to the nodes involving the fixed signs, for me, there's a strong past life karmic kind of energy. It's not just a pattern I need to change. It's a pattern that has become ingrained over lifetimes that needs to change. And so it can feel much more difficult. It can feel much more emotional. It can feel much more intense. And specifically, whenever I see Aquarius involved as kind of that midpoint, the point that both nodes are squaring, for me, that brings up, what are you resisting? There's a resistance too. I think the nodes encapsulate for me a lot of what the changes need to be about, but here it's like we're pushing through. It's like a birthing canal energy. Maybe think about, it doesn't have to be something I do alone, that what is going to happen might be larger. Monika, you were mentioning earlier with the Mercury and Chiron conjuncting that new moon, that perhaps this is a good time for some counseling or getting some assistance. I feel like this echoes that as well, that this Mars is like, I have to do the work, and Venus is like, but I don't have to do it alone. Right. And maybe that in itself can make us find ways to move through the resistance. But it really feels to me like if we're going to embrace that Taurus future we want, first step is we have to let go of the fears. For me, that South Node and Scorpio, it's like there are fears that have led many of us to create, and I'm totally projecting some of my own personal stuff here. I recognize that. But this is the work I've been sitting with, is the fear has led me to create something that gives me the illusion of control. So if I feel like I have control, I don't have to face the fear, and now I'm stuck in this pattern of behavior that no longer serves. And so cutting the cord is not as simple as I'm just going to change that pattern. It's got these deeper layers of, I have to face the thing I'm afraid of as well. Does that make any sense to y'all? Or am I just
It
on a
does. It
Virgo ramble?
does. It absolutely does, because like you say, with a fixed sign, it's not just something that you've done yesterday or for the past 3 months that it's easy to change. It's fixed energy. It's frozen energy. It's kind of that energy like a rock. There's no movement there, or very little movement there. And for people who might not subscribe to the whole past life thing, you don't have to even look at past life. You can look at your past generations, what your mom did and what your grandma did and what her grandma did. That's effectively your past life as well. That's the ingrained family karma that you have, the layers and layers of generations telling you how to deal with your resources, how to deal with fear, what to be afraid of. We all have that, and we all have that in different places. So yeah, I agree that there's a lot of fear coming up, with the South Node in Scorpio, fear of exposure, fear of being exposed, or all the ugly, the ugly, the shameful, the taboo, the uncomfortable, layers that we want to keep hidden, whether in our own subconscious, whether in our family lives. We all have that kind of closet that we don't want to let anyone in, whether it's a literal one at home, or whether it's metaphorical. And I think that Mars, again, moving, like you say, moving close to Saturn, it's asking us to take actions on those fears. Is it going to be easy? Nope. It's not. Is it going to be worth it? I think with that Chiron sitting on that new moon, there is that promise of healing. So, if that action is taken in responsible way, Saturn, let's not just dive into all our trauma and all our shadow, because we can drown in that. But let's take that action responsibly, Saturn. Let's have a support. Let's have maybe someone like Kimberly, you mentioned with Venus. You might not necessarily do it alone. And that can be incredibly healing. And that can then start moving and shifting that energy into that North Node in Taurus a bit more.
And
I
with
have
the
felt like
stationary,
since. Go ahead, Anne.
and I was just saying that with the stationary Pluto, it can be the beginning of the process of change that starts now, but will go on for a long time.
Yeah. It's very unassuming new moon, isn't it? Like when the first layer you look at it, there's just a little bit there, and then you go deeper and deeper, and those layers come through. So it's interesting timing on the April's Fool's Day.
Very interesting timing. I feel like since the eclipse started last year in the Taurus-Scorpio axis, it feels like I keep remembering the mythology around the sign, the symbols for Scorpio. That Scorpio can be the scorpion, it can be the eagle, it can be the transformation of the firebird or the thunderbird. And I kind of feel like with this energy of Saturn hanging out in Aquarius during all this happening, it's like I feel like I just keep getting asked by the universe over and over, are you going to be the scorpion? Are you going to go hide under a rock? Or are you going to rise and be that eagle and see the bigger picture, see the patterns, see the things that you need to face, that need to change, that you need to change? And ultimately, perhaps at the end of this cycle, this journey, there will be the potential of rising from those transformative ashes, as it were, like that phoenix. So it feels both scary and exciting at the same time.
Agreed.
I think before we wrapped up, Monika, you were saying that we really should mention something about the Jupiter Neptune.
Yeah, I keep coming back to that. I feel like a little bit like a broken record. But we have a Jupiter conjunct Neptune exactly on, I believe it's 12th of April. So we have another cycle of Jupiter and Neptune begins. And I think it might add this layer of healing as well. It's in sign of Pisces. We have Jupiter and Neptune meeting there. shortly after the new moon, well, shortly, 12 days or 11 days after the new moon, but you have this another layer of spirituality, mysticism, things that are important to us on that metaphysical level, not just the mundane level, but metaphysical level. What is the meaning of life that I hold dear, and that guides my decision making, my judgment in the world. And I think that can be another layer of that healing added. It can expand our vision. It can help expand that idea of the quest for something bigger, for answers out there. Again, like with everything, there's the flip side, that it can bring the false prophets, so to speak, and a bit of delusion, and jumping into something bigger and better just because we see that beautiful shiny thing, very Neptunian, just to be disillusioned with it soon. But used wisely, that can be a beautiful energy for a deep meditation, for really going deep into those Piscean waters of our soul, to actually look for that teacher within.
That, just to be transparent, we're having some fun stops and starts here with our technology, guys. I was saying that one of the things I love about Neptune is its energy of release requires a certain amount of forgiveness. I think that forgiveness, whether it's self-forgiveness or forgiveness of others or of life events, that releasing energy of Neptune requires usually some type of forgiveness, or we would have already released, we would have already let go. And so Jupiter hitting it feels like it's getting really large and big. Neptune's making this exact trine to the south node. It's making that sextile to the north node. So it feels beautiful to me. It feels like this very loving, gentle, supportive energy of it's time to let that, and everyone can fill in the blank for themselves about what that is. It's time to let that go. In order to let that go, I have to forgive. And so I'm really curious to see how this kind of unfolds over the coming month as Jupiter's making, another exact contact.
That's beautiful. Like that.
Anyone have any other burning thoughts before we move into tips?
I wanted to say, no, that's actually such a great segue to my tip, if I can start. So one thing that I'll be doing around this new moon, and what I tend to do around spring equinox full time, is the idea of the spring cleaning. And for me, this new moon, again, is this opportunity of clearing things. And it's not just, clearing your old clothes or just cleaning the kitchen and removing the cobwebs. It's very much, for me, clearing the stuck energy, whether it's within the house, moving the boxes, moving the environment around you, because we know that if the environment is cluttered, if the environment, our desks at work, or our houses are cluttered, are full of stuff, that we don't move, we get that stagnated energy. There's nothing else, and there's no space for the new things to come in. And I believe that as well within us, we need that clear of the thoughts, releasing the thoughts, releasing the patterns, very much clearing your head as well. There is something lovely that happens when you actually go through a clear out in the house, in the garden. I've done that actually. I started doing my garden last weekend. When it just feels like you can push the old energy and all that kind of stagnant energy of winter, and you invite something new, that fresh breath, that fresh air of spring can come in, again, literally into the house when you open the windows, or metaphorically into your life. So for me, this new moon is very much taking action on that. It's taking action on making space in my life on so many levels, literally, metaphorically, emotionally, spiritually, you name it. Making space, creating space by getting rid of stuff that are no longer needed. And I love what you said about that Jupiter, Neptune. Yeah, sometimes letting go of stuff need that kind of forgiveness. I don't know if there are any fans of Marie Kondo and the method. And I absolutely love when she, before she releases anything, she actually checks, does it still spark joy? You know, is it still needed? Does it still have that emotional connection? Do I need it? If I don't, if there is nothing, if there's nothing within me that enjoys whatever I'm holding, I thank that object, you know, that, and I let it go. And I love that we acknowledging, by saying thank you, we acknowledging all the good stuff that you know, that thing brought into our lives, that we've used it, we've enjoyed it, whether it's old jumper, I mean, or old car. We acknowledge all the good that came with it, but it's time to go. And saying that thank you, letting it go, creates that space. So for me, very much, the new moon will be about creating that space on so many levels. And I think, again, with Chiron there, it can bring a lot of healing energy if used with intention.
That
And
was
you wanna?
really nice one. I like that. I just wanted to give a tip about people asking about when should you make a decision when it's the new moon. I mean, the week before the new moon, maybe you start to get a lot of ideas, a lot of new thoughts. I want to do this. I want to go. I wanna start something new. And when is the right time to do this? Of course, I'm not a good on this. I can say when is the right time for you, but I could say that maybe it's not on the day of the new moon. Maybe you should still wait someday and think about, I mean, building up the thoughts and ideas about what you want to do in the week before the new moon. Let the new moon day go. And then after that, if you still feel, okay, this is the thing I would like to go for. And especially with Aries, we might be a bit impulsive. We might rush a bit. So maybe a day after new moon. What do you guys think about that?
I love that. I do that. New moon is for me to set intention. This is what I'm going to do. This is the step I'm going to take. But I always encourage people, go out there and see the moon in the sky. You know, wherever you are, just look for it. And the moment you see that tiny sliver, that's your moment, because that energy is now shining. So that always happens, like you say, day or two after the new moon. But actually, instead of looking at the chart like we do and calculating your degree, or, you know, or listening to an astrologer or someone else, just go out there, have a look at the sky, and have a look what that moon is, and you will see that sliver on the moon, and you will know, okay, this is my energy. This is the moment when that crescent moon is out in the sky, shining that extra light, and begins to grow. And that's the moment for me to begin to grow, to take that action, to grow into the full moon. So yeah, I absolutely, I love that. It's a good tip, and that's what I do. And that's actually the moment when I don't use the chart or the software, when I'm actually going
Yeah,
out there, instead of checking in my window.
great. Yeah,
Yeah, it's so important that we don't lose our connection with the physical sky, I believe, with the cosmos, with the universe. It's not a piece of paper that we're looking at. It's the energy that's coming down. So I agree. I also love to go out and look for the moon from when she's in the dark of the moon until that sliver appears. It's that waiting, that expectation, that being in the unconscious space. For me, as I mentioned earlier, the Aries new moon is the hardest one for me to sit and hold that space with. I want to do. So what I am planning to do, my tip for myself, and I share it with others with this one, is to really sit with, what do I want? Aries energy is about me, myself, I. It's the cardinal sign about taking action for the self. You know, it's connected with Mars. It has associations with the first house for a reason, that it's about me. And so I feel like, going back to, you know, we mentioned how there's always the great cycle within astrology, cycles within cycles. So there's always a time to begin. We can begin at the new year. We can begin at the new astrological year. We can begin at a new moon. There's all these beginnings. Everything's a cycle, and everything that ends begins again. For me, the new year is often with that Capricorn energy of the sun. The new year, calendar year, is often about, what is the action I want to take? What are the things I need to do? What are the plans I need to do for my job or for my family or for my house? It isn't about what I want. It's often about what I need to do. And so here is this energy of, I feel like, I actually get to sit and think about, what do I want? and where in my life is there room for it? So I've heard the saying, restart, new year, new you, begin again.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's where I'm at. I'm in this new year, new me. This is the year cycle of a
Mm-hmm.
year where I actually get to think about, what do I want for myself? And now what action am I going to take to start bringing that forward into my life? Not a big, huge plan, actions. So I'm really focusing on, during those 2-3 days of waiting for the crescent to appear, I am going to be focusing on really kind of creating this long laundry list of what are the actions, what is the thing I want for me, and what are the actions that I can start taking now to start bringing that forward, because every action will lead to another, and eventually it will be here. So that's where I'm at.
I love that. Yeah, if someone created a vision board or they had like a New Year's resolution, this is a perfect time, like you say, to actually bring that and look, okay, I have all that list of what I want to achieve. What are the exact steps that I'll take tomorrow, that I'll take, after tomorrow, that I take next week? So that's brilliant. That's the moment where it's not just a plan, but that plan in action. I love it. I do like a fiery moon, I have to say.
I do too. So any
Yeah.
parting words before we close off?
No, have a fabulous new moon.
Absolutely, and a fabulous Fool's Day, and take it easy with the tricks.
Yes. Enjoy your April Fool's Day. Enjoy your new moon. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another Astro Chat talking about the upcoming full moon and eclipses that follow.
Oh, gosh.
Have a good day.
Bye.
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 Thank you for joining us in this week's Astro Chat. We hope that you enjoyed the discussion and would love to hear about anything that resonated with you. Keep the conversation going by posting shareable content on our Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube pages. You can also email us at astrochatpodcast@gmail.com. AstroChat is uploaded every 2 weeks on the Saturday before each new and full moon. Look for us on your favorite podcast platform as well as on YouTube. You can support AstroChat and receive exclusive content by donating on our Patreon page. We look forward to chatting with you all again at the next lunation of the moon.